Hi everyone, Stepan here. In today's video I'm going to go over rounds 4 and 5 of the Senta Open. And I just have to say that after losing the first 3 rounds of the tournament, I felt devastated, and it's really hard to stay focused on your next game when you've basically came so far behind that I lost all the points that I won in Novi Sad, and I lost about 17 points in the first 3 rounds, so I was really upset. And the worst thing about losing, so I don't think I've ever lost 3 rounds of a tournament in a row. The worst thing about that is that you know that you are going to be playing a low-rated opponent, and that even if you win, you have no chance of getting your points back. And the worst thing is you might lose because they are lower rated, they are not bad players. So the feelings are hard to explain, but it's a lot of pressure and unease, and you basically want to quit playing and go back home. But then you need to concentrate, focus on the next game, and try to play the best you can. So luckily for me, I won the both of the games against low-rated opponents. After winning in round 4, the only thing I hoped for, and I spoke to a grandmaster that day and said, I just wish I don't play the 1500 guy, because this is everybody else in the tournament is rated above 2000, and there is probably 6 or 7 players lower rated than that, and this guy who is 1500 is the lowest rated player. And you can imagine my feelings when the pairings got out for round 5 and I'm facing him. But still, you need to do the best you can and try to concentrate. So in round 4, I was playing a 1700 player with the black pieces, and if you've seen the videos from Novi Sad, you know that my record with black has been horrendous. So I wasn't really happy coming into this game, which I had to win. D5, knight f3, knight f6, c4, c6, and now e3, the quiet Slav on the board, bishop g4, which is this variation is not the most common one, but I like playing it. h3, bishop h5, knight bd2, e6, and now he played a3, which I think is a waste of time. Bishop e2 is a move. Knight bd2 is a weird move in itself. Knight c3 is much better, followed by bishop e2. So this setup I don't really understand. Knight bd7, bishop e2, bishop d6, the most active diagonal, and now b3. I mean, white has to go for e4 here, and I think that b3, bishop b2 is not such a good plan, because I never have to open up this diagonal, so his bishop is probably going to be bad on b2. I just castled bishop b2, and now I played rook c8. And rook c8 I played in case he plays c5. I want to play bishop b8 and then follow it up with queen c7 and get some tricks on the long diagonal. Instead of that, I was thinking about the move knight e4, and I thought about knight e4 for a long time. That's probably the only way for me to prove my advantage here, which black has to have a slight edge here because white played 2 really bad moves and the knight is misplaced on d2. So I was thinking about knight e4, and if he doesn't take, well, my knight is great on e4, I can play f5. If he takes, which is the critical line, then d takes, knight d2, and now bishop takes e2, queen takes e2, f5. And the problem is that I'm opening up the diagonal for the bishop, and that he can castle queenside. So after castles queenside, let's say bishop e7, targeting this pawn, c5, bishop c7. I do have some great squares for my pieces, but he has some great squares too, and I'm not sure that I have that much. So since he is a low-rated player, I didn't want to complicate anything. I just played sensible developing moves, and to my surprise, he did play c5, which is really bad. Not because bishop b8, queen c7, but because I now play e5 without having to worry about c takes d. And usually, after let's say here rook c8, instead of rook c8, if I play the move e5, which is possible, then this exchange happens, and let's say my rook is on e8, I'm going to have an isolated queen pawn in a position where I don't have that much compensation. But after c5, bishop b8, he played rook c1. Now I can simply prepare the move e5, and there's nothing he can do about that. So rook e8, I'm just going to play e5 and be slightly better. So the thing that he has to do if he wants to stop e5 is knight e5, which I've calculated, and then In this position where c5 has been played, I'm going to play b6 and undermine the structure on the queen side. So I don't really mind his d-pawn getting to e5, because I'm going to have two targets on c5 and d5. His bishop is going to be dead for the rest of the game, and I'm going to play b6 next move. So if he doesn't stop e5, let's say he castles, then I think black has to be better here. I mean, black has to have equalized already and probably have a slight advantage. And I'm going to put pressure on his queen side. He doesn't have a way to advance these pawns. I can even play knight e4 and exchange and be slightly better. So in the game after rook e8, he did play knight e5, and now we have bishop takes e2, queen takes e2, knight takes e5, d takes e5, knight e7, knight f3. F4 isn't a good move because I think I can just check. That's one thing. And probably, or maybe not check. Well, I'm not sure, but I didn't think f4 was a good move. I think that's too weakening. Maybe even check here and just win. Yeah, no, that's not possible. But f4 is too weakening. I expected knight f3, and that's what was played. And now I played queen e7, just to put some pressure on c5, get my queen to a better square, connect my rooks, and now after b4, which I expected, b6. And now he doesn't have to take on b6, which he did, which is bad. He can play something like bishop d4, let's say queen d8, castles, bc5, bc5, f6. I'm playing sort of a French defense plan, undermining one side, then the other. Let's say ef6, let's say e5, f7 check. And this position is, I think, equal, has to be equal. Perhaps if somebody is better, it's black, because I have two targets to exploit. But in the game after b6 he took, which is just bad. After castles, now I continue with c5, and I'm just going to have a lot of pressure on his center, his e5 pawn, and I'm going to have a passed pawn. If he does something, if he doesn't do anything, I'm going to have a broad center and a lot of control, put pressure on the a3 pawn, and basically win the pawn, win the game. Bishop c3 was played, bishop c7, I want to play rook a8, queen b2. I mean, he's over defending the e5 pawn, which is no longer the center of the position, just rook a8, rook fd1, rook a7, rook c2. I mean, here I would guess that black is already winning after rook a1. I was trying to make some sacrifices work on c4 here, but I don't think they work yet, so I played rook a4 just to try and make it work. So let's say, well, he played bishop e1 here. So my bishop is hanging now, but I guess if he doesn't play bishop e1, let's say he plays here, I don't think it works. Takes, or maybe it does. Well, my bishop is hanging in the end, so I'm not sure. Yeah, it works. But so anyway, I was going for some tricks like this, but after bishop e1, nothing really works. So now queen d8. I want to keep more defense over the b6 square. I want to get my queen into play, and I want to increase the pressure on the a file if he allows me. He played queen c1 here, which just, I mean, it just blunders his e5 pawn. But let's say he played the best moves. Let's say, yeah, bishop back to c3. My plan was just this, yes, trying to increase the pressure on both files. Let's say here. Well, I don't know, it would have been a game. But after queen d8, queen c1, knight takes e5, he didn't take here, he played knight d2, and now it's just game over because I have knight d3. After knight d3, queen b1, I have another tactical blow, knight takes b4. Of course, the knight cannot be taken, the rook is hanging, so he played rook c3, but now bishop e5. Knight f3 was tried, bishop c3, and now knight c6, just consolidating my position. He played queen b2, but that's exactly why I played knight c6, so that I can meet that with d4. e4, cd4, he played bishop d2, I played queen d6 here, and this is where his time ran out. The critical move is queen takes b6, of course, in which case rook b8 doesn't really do much because of bishop f4. And we would have an exchange. So after after queen d6, my plan was to, if queen b6, just to take on a3, and after rook a3, you can see that my back rank is safe, because my queen and my knight are defending here, and this is just winning. So, after the game, I was happy, because, well, I had to win and I won. Some of the pressure got lifted off my shoulders, and then when the pairings got out, I saw that I was playing a 1500 player, so once again, you have to win and you get almost nothing in return. So, came to the game the next day and tried to make the best of it once again. I played e4, we have c5, knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, f3, once again I played the Prince Sicilian, and here he played e5, knight b3, bishop e6, which is actually the most sensible continuation. I continued with c4, and now one of the best ways for black to play is to play knight d7, and after bishop e3 to play rook c8. And now the best way for white to play is to just give up the pawn and enter complications after queen d3, and now, well, now either taking on a7 or castling long, but that's another story. After c4 though, he played knight c6, which is an inferior move, doesn't put pressure on c4 immediately, doesn't force me to any concessions. So bishop e3, b6, which makes no sense. I have to say that this move is just... It's probably better if he did nothing and it was just my move, I think. Knight c3, bishop e7, rook c1, rook c8, queen d2, h6, another move which is probably best. It's probably best if he didn't play it, probably best if he'd given me the move. The king side is now really weak, and now g4, g5 comes with a lot of threats, and also bishop h6. Bishop e2, castles, I castled, he played queen c7, and now it's really hard to play black, just knight d5. He cannot take, he has to move the queen, and now just rook c2, and I'm going to, well, every single one of my pieces is going to be better than his pieces. He can take, but I'm not sure that works. Rook fd8, rook fc1, king h7, and now this is just a provocation. I could have played bishop d3 immediately, but I don't want to give up the b4 square because I want to be able to move my queen, so I don't want to give up my bishop or my rook, so I played a3 as a preparatory move, and rook d7, which doesn't do anything, and now bishop d3. And now my threat is f4 and f5. In some positions I'm going to be giving up the e5 square, which I was aware of, but I was to risk that and didn't really care about allowing his knight squares if I can open up the king. He played knight h5 and I just played f4. Now, I was afraid of e takes f4 and knight takes f4, knight takes f4, bishop takes f4, and something like king g8 or knight e5, but I think that even after king g8, I could try transferring my pieces towards the king, and I think it's dangerous for him. Black should be fine here, but it's going to be harder to play for black. But after f4, I didn't expect him to do that. I expected f6, and that's what happened. f5, bishop f7, and now g4 might look tempting, but it's a mistake because his knight gets to f4, and whenever I take, he gets the e5 square for his knight again. So let's say g4, knight f4. I might probably have to play bishop f1 or something like that because I don't want to take. So after bishop f7, the most precise move is g3, just restraining his knight, and now I'm going to continue my attack. I think g3 must have been the best move, and I think that white should be winning here. Yeah, with g3 is plus 3 points something. After g3, he continued bishop d8, which connects his rook and his queen to the f7 pawn, but queen f2 just mounting the pressure now. I want to get all of my pieces into play, and here he went crazy. He played g5. I think that having some exchanges on the board before g5 would have been better. So let's say this is a variation I saw for him. We're trying to exchange all the rooks and now going for g5, in which case he would have had a slightly better chance to defend. White is still winning, but I don't think it's plus 3. Yeah, it's plus 2.5. But after queen f2, he played g5 immediately. So now en passant, bishop takes, and now knight d2. I'm not in a rush. I want to play knight f3, knight h4, or yeah, and then to f5. He played rook f7, and now I changed plans. Now I played g4. I thought that it was too risky for him to play knight f4. I mean, even if he plays knight e5, I'm just going to play queen h4. It's probably he cannot take here, obviously. So yeah, I thought it was going to be too scary. So after g4, he didn't play that. He played knight g7, and now I continued knight f3, knight e7, and here, well, I have several options here. The best one is probably after knight e7, just to play queen h4, forcing this, and I mean, white has to be winning. It's a question of how winning. Let's see, yeah, +8 or something like that. So, but I didn't really see a clear way to continue this attack, and I wanted to play something a bit more complicated, so I took on h6 immediately. And after bishop h6, there was one variation I was afraid of, which I thought could be survivable for black, and that's knight takes knight. And after knight takes knight, pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes. The difference is that I no longer have a knight on d5 controlling f6. So now after king takes, queen h4 check, knight h5, pawn takes, bishop takes, I don't have the normal variation which I had in the game, and I don't have knight takes f6, and the difference is that his knight, which was on e7, is not blocking the bishop anymore. So since the knight is not here, I cannot take on f6, and his bishop is in the game as well. So this is a variation I was afraid of, but I thought, well, it's 5 pawns each, material is equal. His king has to be in worse shape than mine, so let's say I continue with something like knight e1, trying to read out my pieces. I wouldn't be too afraid. Let's say queen c8, trying to get into play here. Something like bishop e2, and well, I'm not too dissatisfied about this position. Let's see what the engine says. Yeah, it's about +2, and white should be able to win. Even though I think black is able to hold on to the piece at least. I mean, this probably should be winning for white, but he didn't find that. After bishop takes h6, he didn't exchange the knight first, which I was happy to see, and now it's just well, it's over now. Knight h5, gh5, bishop h5, knight f6 check, rook takes f6 is the only move. And now taking on f6 would be a horrible mistake. If you take on f6 check, then knight g6 covers the check, and my queen is under attack, so I have to play something like queen e6, and now bishop takes f3. So it's really hard to play this position now, and I think black could be fine. But after rook takes f6, I'd calculated queen g5 check, king h7, took on f6, and now after knight g6, the difference is that I have knight g5 check, king g8, queen e6, king g7, and now I played rook g2. He played queen c7 for some tricks with bishop takes knight, rook takes knight, and then check here, king h1, bishop f3 checkmate. In some distant future that might happen, but just rook f1 stops all of that. He played queen c5 anyway, king h1. Now he played knight f4, and this is just game over. Discovered checks with the knight might not be the best option because he has knight g6, but they're just a mate in a few moves here. I think the best move is bishop d7 or something like that. He played king h6, which is a mate in 1. If he plays king h8, then this is a mate in 1. If he plays king f8, then this is a mate in 1. If he plays king f6, then this is a mate in 1, so it's really hard to defend. So yeah, I risked a bit in this last game. I wanted a complicated position which he couldn't calculate as well as I could, and I got what I wanted. And so after winning 2 games against lower rated opponents, I still lost about 10 points in the tournament with 2 out of 5. And in round 6, I was finally paired against a 2000 plus player, and I had the black pieces, and I finally had a good game. I'm going to cover that in the next video. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought about the games. Let me know how you deal with losing a few rounds and then having to face a low-rated opponent. I think that's the worst thing that could happen during a tournament. You have to win and you don't get anything if you do, which is just so frustrating. You want to basically quit. Okay, for those of you following me on Patreon, I'm going to be analyzing a bit more in depth into these games, and I'm going to continue covering the mistakes I made at Senta Open and Novi Sad Open, and the ways the training methods I use to improve on my mistakes. Thanks very much. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.